Hi, and welcome to the Early Retirement Roadmap Podcast, the show where I help you prepare for and thrive in early retirement. Since you're listening to this podcast and episode, I'm sure you've saved and planned for retirement for years, and retirement may feel really close, which is amazing, and congratulations. But are you really ready? And how can you be more confident? After all, leaving the workforce is a huge life milestone, and I'm sure you're nervous about it like I was. So I'm sure you want to have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed, as that saying goes. So today I'm walking you through a countdown to retirement, an essential game plan that makes you sure you're not missing something big. Because of course, the reason you're so diligently planning is to make sure you don't have any financial surprises later on once you retire. We're going to cover everything from savings targets to smart withdrawal strategies, Social Security timing, healthcare before Medicare, and the biggest risk most people don't think about. Plus, I'm excited to tell you that hot off the press, I've created a free checklist guide to help you actually take action on all of this. It's called the 12 Must-Do Steps to Retire Sooner and Smarter. You can download it when you can. You can download it when you can after listening and use the link in the description or show notes. I'll be highlighting tips from the guide throughout this episode. And after listening, downloading, and using the free checklist guide to validate you've done all the essential planning too, if you've done all the checklist steps completely, it should really help you achieve the confidence you need to take the retirement leap. And be sure to stick around because I'll reveal a Social Security decision trap that sounds smart but could cost you thousands if you're not careful. You'll definitely want to hear that part. Before we dive into the dollars, you need to define your vision and set a target retirement age. First up, what is your vision of retirement? It's important to get clear on your why. Why do you want to retire early and what does it mean to you? What will your day-to-day life in retirement look like? These are fundamental questions that you must know, as having a clear vision drives the decisions you will make pertaining to your retirement, such as your target age, what kind of budget you'll need in retirement, and therefore how much of a nest egg you'll need and so forth, or even if early retirement is the right fit for you. Because early retirement, of course, sounds like the ideal, but if you haven't clearly defined what you're retiring to rather than what you're retiring from, and you haven't defined for yourself your purpose and what retirement is going to look like for you, you're missing a very crucial step that you must have figured out to be happy in early retirement, and so you can make sure it's the right thing for you. After all, retiring early isn't always for everyone. And it's certainly not going to be for you if you don't have a vision of what it looks like, so that you're not bored but fulfilled and you're not missing the work life you loved. Next, pick a target age to retire. Some common ones are 55, 59 and a half, or 62 because at 55, you can access your 401k penalty-free under the rule of 55. This rule allows you to withdraw from your current employer's 401k without the 10% early withdrawal penalty if you leave your job to retire in or after you turn 55. And at 59 and a half, you can fund your retirement from your IRAs and 401ks without penalty. And 62 is another popular milestone as it's the earliest age to claim Social Security, though we'll talk more about that later. Now let's start talking money. First, you need to have a solid budget for retirement, and in particular, you must plan for healthcare. I can't emphasize that enough. Most people start their retirement budget by looking at their current expenses, and that makes perfect sense. However, a big expense that is not going to be accounted for just by looking at your current expenses is healthcare, because many of you are currently covered by an employer health plan. But when you retire before the age of 65, you'll need to fund your health insurance costs yourself. You'll likely need to consider either an ACA plan, COBRA, or private insurance, and costs can range from a few hundred to over $1,000 per month. So this is a huge expense, and you absolutely need to budget for this and think it through thoroughly. In fact, so much so, it's number 7 in the free checklist guide I mentioned you can download from the description or show notes. And in this checklist item, I've also linked to 4 must-watch videos of mine that walk you through all your options and how to save thousands on premiums with strategic planning. So yes, use your current expenses to create a budget, but just don't forget about health insurance. And don't forget to budget in extra costs, especially at the beginning of your retirement when you're young and more active, often called the go-go years for your hobbies and travel. And funding for those activities may very well be more than what you budget today while you're working, because in retirement, you're going to have more time to do these things. Next up is know your number. From your retirement budget, calculate your FIRE number. That is the nest egg you'll need. Now, I'm sure you've heard of the 4% rule. This has been around for quite a while. However, it was designed for traditional retirees with a 30-year retirement. But if you retire early, your retirement can last 40 years or more. So for early retirees, a lower withdrawal rate, such as 3 to 3.5%, is more prudent. And there are other issues with the 4% rule that I can't get into all here. For example, it doesn't account for one-time expenses, doesn't include leaving money for your children, and so forth. The checklist and associated video link in it go into far more detail. And don't forget about other income sources you may have too, like rental income, perhaps from real estate you own, as well as the guaranteed income from Social Security. These, of course, definitely put a nice dent in terms of what your portfolio number needs to be to fund your retirement. Next up, protecting against risk. Too often in planning, we focus on how much we need in our nest egg, but don't realize to keep that nest egg intact, we need to plan for sequence of returns risk. Because if the market drops right as you retire, then you're pulling income from a shrinking portfolio, and that can cause serious damage in the early years of retirement. To protect against that, keep 3 to 4 years of essential expenses in cash or bonds so you can outride the average bear market downturn and recovery. And consider using a bond 10 strategy. Increase your bond allocation in your portfolio as you approach retirement, then reduce later. The free checklist in the description or show notes dives into this in more detail and has a link to a video on this topic where I cover sequence of returns risk in depth. Then, as part of retirement planning, there is the question of when to take Social Security, delay it or start early. When you take it determines how much you're going to get, which impacts your target savings number needed for your portfolio, as your portfolio doesn't need to carry the entire weight of funding your retirement. So in terms of when to take Social Security, many point to the fact that the more you delay, the larger monthly check you'll have. And that's true. In fact, between ages 67 to 70, you're getting about 8% more per year. So that means your Social Security check will be about 24% higher by age 70. But here's what most people miss: opportunity cost. If you delay claiming Social Security, how are you covering your expenses in the meantime? You're probably drawing more from your investments, and every dollar withdrawn is a dollar that's no longer invested and compounding. So in some cases, the lost investment growth from early withdrawals can outweigh the increased benefit. So in that situation, it may make sense to start withdrawing at an earlier age. The simple fact is there's just no one-size-fits-all here, and it takes careful planning because when to take Social Security can also depend on your expected longevity, lifestyle, and your portfolio returns, among other things. Like with all retirement planning, it's always highly individualized because everyone's situation is different. The free checklist available in the description goes into this in more detail, as well as a video resource linked to it where I cover this topic thoroughly. Another thing you'll want to have planned for is your withdrawal strategy, and one that is tax efficient. For example, if you have a taxable brokerage account, tap that first to keep your MAGI low and preserve ACA subsidies if you're planning on using an ACA plan before Medicare kicks in, since your eligibility for subsidies and how much you'll get is based upon your MAGI. The other great thing is that taxable brokerage accounts have no restrictions on when you can withdraw from them, of course, and no penalties. Also consider doing Roth conversions in your low-income years and delay tapping your 401k traditional IRA to grow tax-deferred. Then it's really important to stress test your plan. Use retirement planning software like Bolden, and one which I highly recommend and use it myself, and I'll have a link to it in the description or show notes. You can run different what-if scenarios to stress test how your retirement plan performs under different market conditions, as well as other changes that might occur during your retirement. And it will run Monte Carlo simulations to give you your outcome of success on each scenario. And it can help you figure out when to take Social Security, what will work best for you, as well as help you plan Roth conversions to help with RMDs in the future, and a lot more. I used it to plan my retirement, and it really gave me the confidence to take the leap. In particular, the what if scenarios, so that I could stress test different scenarios, like what happens if we get poor market returns, or what if inflation becomes higher than expected, and so forth. And that stress testing gave me a ton of confidence as my plan was successful even in the more bearish scenarios. As a result, I felt very comfortable making the decision to retire. So now that you've listened to this episode, how close are you to retirement readiness? Which of these things I've highlighted today do you still have to do? Make sure you download your free copy of 12 Must-Do Steps to Retire Sooner and Smarter using the link in the description. Use it as your step-by-step checklist to walk through everything we've covered today and more, and it has links to videos I've made that covers many of the topics in depth. And while you're checking out the description or show notes to do the download, depending on the platform you're listening on, make sure to like, subscribe, or leave a positive review. I'd love to know what your biggest worry is as you approach retirement, and how prepared are you? And go to mikeupland.com for all my media, including my blog. Thanks for listening. This is Mike Upland, early retiree, last year at age 55. Take care and make the most of today.